بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى أهله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. The evils of music. The devil's voice and instrument. Imam Abu Abdullah Muhammad bin Abu Bakr bin Ayub bin Qasim al-Jawziyya, born 691 Hijriya and died 751 Hijriya, taken from there, delivering the afflicted from the plots of a shaitan. Chapter 1. The position of the scholars regarding music and singing. The mention of the position and statement of the scholars regarding singing from the plots of the shaitan, Satan and his traps, which he uses to influence those who possess only a small share of knowledge, intellect, and religion. And with this he captures the hearts of the ignorant and the people of falsehood. Is listening to whistling, al-muka, clapping, al-tasdiyah, and singing accompanied by instruments which are forbidden. That turns their hearts away from the Quran and causes them to become preoccupied with disobedience and transgressions. So it is the Quran of the shaitan and the dense barrier that keeps people from the most merciful. And it is the enticement of homosexuality and illicit sexual promiscuity. Through it, the moral lava entices lava to the very limit of their desires. With it, the shaitan deceives their stray souls and makes it even seem good to them through scheming and delusion. He inspires within them baseless doubts to justify its goodness, and his decisions are accepted. Because of this, it causes the Quran to become abandoned. So if you were to see them whenever they indulge in that listening of theirs, when their voice become low, their emotions cease, their hearts become completely engaged in it, and they are completely inclined towards it. When this occurs, they begin to sway to it, not like the swaying of the one who is drunk. Rather, there is a languor to their motions and dancing. Haven't you witnessed the languor of the effeminate men and the women? And it is only befitting for them, since its intoxication has influenced them, and as it did not it did to them what the worst cups of alcohol will do. So for other than Allah's sake, rather for the devils, the hearts are torn apart, rewards are destroyed, and wealth is spent in other than the obedience of Allah. Once this drunkenness has had its effect, and the shaitan has attained his wish and goal for them, and has provoked them with his voice and plots, and he was able to win them over with all his cavalry and infantry, then he rejects something into their heart chest and incite them to intensively strike the ground with their feet. So it is a period in which he makes them like donkeys around a water wheel, and sometimes like the fly that buzzes around the inside of a house. So, oh mercy, regarding the rooftops and land that is a shelter for the footsteps of those feet, and oh how evil are those who resemble the donkeys and cattle, and how the enemies of Islam gloat regarding those who claim that they are the elite of Islam, who spend their lives engaged in pleasures and indulgence, while taking their religion as amusement and play. The instrument of the shaitan were more beloved to them than listening to the chapters of the Quran. If one of them were to listen to the Quran from beginning to end, it will not cause any movement, disturb his slave, affect his heart, or penetrate him with an increasing burning desire towards Allah, unless the Quran of the shaitan was recited to them, and it rehims penetrate his hearing, the springs of ecstasy, wajr in his heart, will explode from his eyes and flow, just as it will burst forth from his feet and cause him to dance, and likewise overwhelm the hands and cause them to clap, just as it will also affect the remaining limbs, such that they will move and shake, and the souls will thus ascend, and its humming will thus increase, just as the fires of its passion will rage. So, O one who has become affected and afflicted, who has sold his station with Allah for his share from the shaitan, this is a fraudulent transaction that only causes loss. Why don't you ascend to these peaks when you hear the Quran? And why don't you experience the like of al-awaq and al-mawajid whenever you recite the Quran? And why don't you experience this exalted state when you recite the Quranic chapters and verses? However, every person yearns for whatever is appropriate for him, and inclines towards whatever is similar to him. And this type of classification is the reason for setting things together in terms of what has been decreed or the creation by Allah, as well as Islamic legislation. While similarly, appearance is the reason for inclining towards something in terms of the intellect and human nature. And from where has this brotherhood and ascription come from, if not from connecting oneself to the shaitan with the strongest of bonds? And from where has this compromise come from, which has undermined the contract of faith and introduced deficiency the promise of the most merciful? أفتخذونه وذرياته أولياء من دوني وهم لكم عدوا بئس للظالمين بدلا. Will you take him and his offspring as your allies instead of me, even though they are your enemies? What an evil exchange for the evildoers. And how excellent was the statement of the poet who said, the book is recited so they remain silent, not out of fear, but instead the silence of attentiveness and distraction. And they resort to singing, and like the donkeys they bray, and by Allah it is not to do to Allah that they dance a deaf drum and reed flute, and the sound of the singer. When have you ever seen worship involve such amusement? The book became heavy upon them once they saw that it specified commandment and restriction. They had done the enlightening because of it, since it inspired rebuke and fear of doing what has been prohibited. And they viewed the Quran as the greatest barrier between oneself and its desires. Oh, how the Quran completely slaughters the desires, and they approach the Sama in complete agreement with the desires, and due to this, tomorrow they will confront a more serious situation. Where is the thing that assists the desires that is singing, when compared to what removes its influence? That is the Quran. Among us, the ignorant and negligent. If it is in the intoxicant of the body, then certainly it is in the intoxicant of the mind. Similar and equivalent. So look at the drunk whenever he drinks, and observe the woman when she is affected by such amusement, and consider how a person might destroy his rewards after already having destroyed his negligent heart, and judge which of the two intoxicants is more deserving of prohibition and being considered sinful with Allah. And he, the poet, said elsewhere, we have freed ourselves unto Allah from a people who have been afflicted by the sickness of listening to singing. And how many times have I said, O people, you are on the brink of a precipice ready to crumble, which is not fit to build upon. A precipice ready to crumble, and beneath it is an abyss that leads to depths. How many will be forced to endure it? And the repetition of such advice from us to them is in order to be excused concerning them before our Lord. So when they rejected our counsel with contempt, we turned to Allah concerning our affair. So we lived upon the sunnah of the preferred Prophet ﷺ, and they died upon the Pita, Pata, Ofrat, Atat, Tat. And the supporters of Islam and the Imams of guidance continue to speak out against these people from the various regions of the world, and they warn against traveling upon their path and following in their footsteps from all of the religious sects. And Imam Abu Bakr al-Tartushi said in the introduction to his book concerning the prohibition of Sama, all praise due to Allah, the Lord of creation, and the final outcome favors those who are mindful of Allah, and there is no animosity except for the evildoers. And we ask Allah to show us the truth as it is, so that way we may follow it, and show us falsehood as it is, so we can avoid it. Certainly the people of the past used to seek to conceal their sins whenever they would fall into them, but then they would seek forgiveness from Allah and repent to Him from their sins. But then ignorance became prevalent, and knowledge became scarce, and their fear declined until one of them will approach a sinful act publicly, and then will increase in their careless neglect until it reaches us that a group from our brothers from amongst the Muslims, may Allah guide us and them, were caused to sleep by the shaitan, and their intellects were misguided regarding love of singing and amusement and listening to beats and drums. And they seem to think that it is from the religion and that it brings them closer to Allah. And one group of Muslims has even done so publicly, and thus made the path of the believers difficult, and in doing so opposed the jurists, the scholars, and those who convey the religion to others. ومن شاق الرسول من بعد ما تبين له الهدى ويشاء غير سبيل المؤمنين يولي ما تولى ونصلي جهنم وساءت مصيرا. And whoever opposes the messenger after guidance has been very clear to him and follows other than the way of the believers, we will direct him towards the path which he has chosen, and burn him in hell, and what an evil destination. Surah Nisa 4 verse 115. So I saw it fitting that I clarify the truth and expose the doubt of the people, or falsehood rule evidence that are contained in the Book of Allah and in the Sunnah of His Messenger. I will begin with the mention of the settlement of the scholars whose religious verdicts have spread throughout the land, so that you will know that this sect has opposed the scholars of the Muslims with the religious innovation bid'ah, and Allah is the facilitator of success. Then he said, as for Malik, then he has prohibited singing and listening to it. And he said, if a servant girl has been purchased and she was found to be a singer, then the buyer has the choice to reject her due to her being a problematic or a defective. Abd Malik was asked about how some of the people of Medina cite legislative exception for singing, and he replied, surely the one who does this according to us is from the sinful transgressors. He said, as for Abu Hanifa, then he certainly detests singing and classified it among the sins. This was likewise the opinion of the people of Kufa, Sufyan, Hamad, Ibrahim, Ash-Sha'bi, and other than them. There was no differing among them concerning it, and we do not know of any differing as well among the people of Al-Basra concerning it being forbidden. I have said, the opinion of Abu Hanifa regarding it is the most severe of all of the schools of thought, and his position regarding it is the hardest of the positions. His companions have certainly stated explicitly the prohibition of listening to all forms of musical instrument, like the reed flute, the daff drum, and even beating with a cane, and they have explicitly stated that this is a sin, and that it necessitates sinfulness and nullifies an individual's testimony or ability to serve as a witness. And even more unequivocal than this is the statement that certainly Sama constitutes sinfulness, and to find pleasure in it is a disbelief. This was the expression they used, and they narrated a hadith in support of it that should not have been ascribed to the Prophet ﷺ. That is marfu. They said it is obligatory upon him to strive not to listen to if he counters it, or if he is near him. And Abu Yusuf said regarding the home where the sound of musical instruments is heard, you should enter the home without permission, because forbidding the evil is obligatory. So if it is not permissible to enter without a permission, then the people will be prevented from fulfilling an obligation, they said, and the Imam should come towards him if he hears that from his home, and if he persists, he should be jailed or flogged with a whip, and if he so will, evacuated from his home. As for Ash-Shafi, then he said in the book Adab al-Qadar, certainly singing is a form of amusement that is detested, and it resembles falsehood and unthinkable. And whoever repeatedly indulges in it is a fool whose testimony and ability to witness should be rejected. And those who are familiar with this school of thought have explicitly stated its impermissibility. I refuted those who have associated its permissibility with their school of thought, like Al-Qadi Abu Tayyib Tabari, Sheikh Abu Ishaq and Ibn Sabah, and Sheikh Abu Ishaq said in At-Tanbih, and it's not correct meaning to seek profit, pursuing any benefit that is unlawful, like singing, playing wind instrument, transporting intoxicants. And he did not mention that there was any referring in this issue. And Abu Ishaq Ash-Shirazi said in Al-Muhaddab, and it is not permissible as related to unlawful benefit, because this is prohibited. So it's not lawful to take any compensation for it, like a dead animal or its blood. This speech of the Sheikh involves several matters. 1. That the benefits of singing by itself are prohibited benefits. 2. The demanding profit for it is utter falsehood. 3. That to make money due to it is to take money for falsehood, which is on the same level as taking money as a compensation for a dead animal carcass or its blood. Number 4, that it's not permissible for a man to spend his money on a singer, and it's unlawful for him to do so, since this involves spending money on something that is prohibited. And him spending money for this is like him spending money for dead animal carcass or its blood. Number 5, that wind instruments are forbidden. And if the wind instruments, which are the least significant of the musical instruments, are still prohibited, then how much so in the case of more significant instruments like the lute and oud, the pandora turban, and the reed flute yura. And it is inappropriate for the one who has experienced the sense of knowledge to hesitate concerning its publicity, since the list of what it involves is from the signs and symbols of the sinful and those who consume intoxicant. Likewise, Abu Zakaria an-Nawawi said in his Rawda, the second classification is to sing accompanied by some musical instrument, which is considered to be from the signs of those who consume intoxicant, and this person is considered a singer. And the instrument referred to here include instruments like the pandora, tumbur, the lute, oud, and the cymbal, sanj, as well as the rest of the musical instruments where they are estranged or otherwise it is forbidden to listen to them or to use them. He said regarding the reed flute yura that there are two angles from which Al-Baghawi deemed as the two angles from which Al-Baghawi deemed as its impermissibility to be the most correct view. Then he mentioned from Al-Ghazali's expression of familiarity. He said, and what is most correct is that the reed flute yura is prohibited, and it is the clarinet shababa. And Abu al-Qasim al-Dawlai authored a book that was written in Italy about the prohibition of the reed flute yura. And Abu Amr ibn Asala mentioned that there is a scholarly consensus ijma regarding the prohibition of the type of sama that involves the combination of the daf drum and the clarinet shababa. And then he said in his collection of Islamic Varied Fatawa, and as for the penalty of this sama and declaring it lawful, then it is known that when the daf drum, the clarinet, shababa, and singing are combined, listening to it is prohibited according to the imams of the schools of thought, and other than them from the scholars of the Muslims. And this position that is deeming it permissible cannot be confirmed from anyone whose statement demands consideration in the affairs of a consensus or differing. None of them have permitted this type of sama. And the differing that has been conveyed from some of the people of the Shafi school of thought has been conveyed regarding the clarinet shababa by itself or the daf drum by itself. So whoever does not conclude or reflect, then perhaps I believe that the difference among the Shafi scholars regarding this type of sama combines all these musical instruments, and that is clearly a mistake on behalf of whoever inclines towards that opinion, in which they claim evidence from Islamic legislation and the proper use of internet to support their opinion, even though not every difference of opinion is considered satisfactory or should be relied upon. Whoever chases after whatever the schools have referred about and then applies only the concessions that were found in their positions, either explicitly commits heresy or comes close to committing heresy. He said, and the statement regarding the sama that has been mentioned, that certainly it is from the things which draw people closer to Allah and is from the acts of obedience, is in opposition to the consensus of the Muslims, and whoever opposes the consensus of the Muslims is under the dread of what Allah mentions in his statement, ومن شك الرسول من بعد ما تبين الهدى ويتبع غير سبيل المؤمنين نولي ما تولى ونصلي جهنم وساءت مصيرا. And whoever opposes the messenger after guidance has been made clear to him and follows other than the way of the believers, we will direct him towards the path which he has chosen and ban him in hell, and what an evil destination. And he wrote a lengthy refutation in great detail of these two groups that have become a troll upon Islam. From them are those who declare to be permissible what Allah has forbidden, and those who seek to draw closer to Allah through things that push them further away from Him. And Shafi and the eldest of his supporters and those who are familiar with his school of thought are from the stanchest of the people regarding that. It has been narrated with so many exchanges from a Shafi that it will be impossible that all of the narrators conspired to spread a lie that he said, I left something in Baghdad that the hypocrite Zanadika have called a tagriq, with which they are driving the people away from the Quran. Ainam. So if this was his position regarding takbir, and he stated that it drives people away from the Quran while it is a type of poetry and that calls for asceticism in the worldly life, and is sung in such a way that some of those who are present beat with their staffs against a rag or a cushion in order to maintain the rhythm of his singing. That is recited poetry. Then I wish I knew what he, Shafi, would say regarding a type of sama which exists today. Takbir, according to him, is like comparing a drop of spit with the ocean. Can the takbir of a Shafi really be compared to the singing, which certainly involves every form of corruption and incorporates every prohibition? So Allah is between his religion and every educated person afflicted by this and every ignorant worshipper. Sufyan bin Uyayna said, it is used to be said, beware of the trial of the sinful scholar and the ignorant worshipper, since the trial of these two individuals affects everyone who is influenced by them. And whoever reflects upon the corruption present in this nation will find that it seems from these two traits.